fast. Got it. This is VK3CSJ. Stand by for the WA broadcast, followed by the ROATC News Bulletin. That's just because I had the microphone on.
It's time to get your news on. We are VK1WIA.
This is the national news for week commencing February 5, 2023, in our 28th year of non-stop news, Australia's longest consistently running ham radio news source. And this week, WIA's Vice President Lee Moyle, VK3GK, President Scott Williams, VK3KJ, Editor-in-Chief, Amateur Radio Magazine, Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH, and from Amateur Radio Victoria, Peter Cousins, VK3BFG. Also, our weekly reminder that all points of contact and more information, including links to our story sources, are best read in the text edition of this news service on wia.org.au. Now, there is much more coming up in this edition of news from the Wireless Institute of Australia. And with the sharp razor blades and scissors, I'm Editor Graham, VK4BB.
Ham Radio News. Nobody does it better. We are VK1WIA.
Hi there, this is WA Director and President Scott Williams, VK3KJ, and nice to be appearing on the broadcast for the first time in 2023. After a few weeks break over the Christmas New Year holiday period, the board is now fully back on deck and already has held 2 board meetings in January and a special meeting last Tuesday night, which I'll talk about a little bit shortly. The board throughout 2022 met generally twice a month. Board meetings are split in 2 halves, with 2 hours set aside each fortnight to cover various items of business, sometimes a little longer. In addition to board meetings, the board will also meet informally from time to time with various committees and individuals to workshop and discuss items which need a little bit more focus or attention. From February, the board has resolved to meet once a month, and we will continue to hold other special meetings as necessary, however frequent they need to be, to ensure we address all items that need attention. In regard to our special meeting last Tuesday night, this was with John Siemens, VK3JLS, who was the National and Inwards QSL Bureau Manager. John had tabled an excellent report to the board covering all aspects of the QSL Bureau for last year, including sharing some observations and insights to some of the issues that have been experienced. In no particular order, the observations are: the Bureau distributed 64,820 cards for 2022, with New South Wales 15,730, Victoria 13,500, Queensland 11,801, Western Australia 9,000, South Australia 6,540, Tasmania 3,870, ACT 2,830, and Northern Territory 1,540. There were 1,234 cards for VK9s, VK0s and special event call signs. The amount of cards distributed in 2022 was just ahead of the 63,270 cards distributed in 2019. Due to COVID, numbers in 2020 and 2021 were significantly less. The amount of misdirected cards in 2022 was 680. These are cards sent to Australia by mistake from other overseas bureaus. Disappointingly, there were 960 cards that were binned in 2022. This is mainly due to individuals not being a member of the WIA, not having an arrangement with one of the state or territory QSL bureaus, not informing the National Inwards QSL manager of special event call signs and where cards should be directed. John reported that he had a database of over 78 special event call signs and needed to continually search QRZ and other call sign databases to try and identify where to direct cards. Generally, any card that cannot be identified where to send it, or there is no arrangement in place, is held for up to 12 months and then generally destroyed. Other issues highlighted included the escalation of bureau postage costs, with cards generally being bulk packaged and distributed every 3 months to help minimise cost. The recent meeting also discussed the amount of expected QSL cards over the next few years, given the additional activity on the bands due to Solar Cycle 25, and the amount of special event call signs, contest call signs, 2x1s, and cards received under the AX prefix. Discussion occurred around call signs for life, where of course today a VK2 call sign could be used in VK4. Therefore, a VK2 QSL card will always end up in the VK2 QSL bureau, which of course, in some occasions, could be incorrect. In summary, there is no doubt we're facing a few challenges with the bureau, and I know there is consultation occurring with all bureaus around Australia to gain feedback and look at ways to create efficiencies. A couple of little reminders are: make sure you're a member of the WIA and help support this wonderful service. Make sure if you're not a member, you have an alternative arrangement in place. Make sure if you are using special event call signs, you notify the National Bureau. This is the first place cards arrive. Make sure special event call signs and contest call signs are listed on the QRZ database with any special instructions, just in case. And finally, if you are using a VK9 or VK0 call sign, make sure you notify the National Bureau. We have had several DX operations of recent time which have not notified the Bureau, and we have hundreds of cards just waiting for distribution. That old saying rings true. Sometimes you have to help yourself before you expect others to help you. Finally, thank you to all the wonderful volunteers that assist the bureaus around the country. I don't think people realise the effort and the amount of work that goes into sorting and distributing cards, both at the National Bureau and each state territory bureau. I would like to make a special mention of long-standing VK4 QSL manager, Mrs. June Sim, who has decided to retire. Thank you, June, for your tireless work over the years and years and making sure cards are sorted and distributed in Queensland. Also, thank you to Laurie Pritchard, VK4 BLE, who has been appointed the new VK4 QSL manager. On behalf of the board, thank you for supporting the WIA and best wishes to you all. WIA President Scott Williams, VK3KJ.
This is Editor-in-Chief of Amateur Radio Magazine, Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH. Last Tuesday, the files of the latest edition of AR, issue number 1 for 2023, were uploaded to the printer's server in Bairnsdale, Victoria. Look out for the issue landing in your letterbox, your post office box, or your local news agency late next week. The theme for this issue is antennas and propagation. Never mind, I'll get back to that shortly. Here is the big news. This year marks 90 years of continuous publication for Amateur Radio magazine. 90 years serving Australia's radio amateurs in the guise of the Journal of the Wireless Institute of Australia. Matters were rather volatile in the lead-up to the WIA magazine's venture in 1933. The youthful WIA had survived 20 years, the Great War, the Roaring Twenties and Global Depression, during which many commercial magazines catering to audiences interested in the new wireless and radio technologies came and went. It is indeed a wonder the WIA's magazine venture got any sort of start. Well, how did Amateur Radio magazine come into being? WIA historian Peter Wolfenden, VK3RV, kicks off part one of a two-part feature. Justin Giles Clark, VK7TW, gets down and dirty, or maybe that should be up and dirty, with building a multiband portable linked dipole. This issue, Lou DiStefano, VK3AQZ, returns with a cunningly conceived and constructed homebrew ATU, rated to handle 400 watts, not to be missed. Poignantly, this issue we have a feature article from a well-known author who is now a silent key. Titled How Radio Australia Reached the World, a concise historical overview of the life and service of Radio Australia from 1944 through 2017. It was written by Rodney Champness, VK3UG, who died in late October last year. We also include a comprehensive obituary on him, compiled by his friend and colleague Vic Ployger, VK2VP. Amateur Radio Magazine, Volume 91, Issue Number 1 for 2023, serving Australian radio amateurs since 1933. Available in print and online, always published to a schedule, never random. This has been AR Magazine Editor-in-Chief Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH for VK1WIA News.
No, you haven't tuned the ether, stirrer. This is the official VK Ham News from the One. We are VK1WIA.
Amateur Radio Victoria is about to run two different online tutorials. The first is for foundation level and commences Monday the 13th of February, 7 till 9 p.m. for 3 nights. The recommended text is your entry to amateur radio, available online from the Wireless Institute of Australia or Amateur Radio Victoria websites. The charge for the tutorial is $60 and enrolments via the Amateur Radio Victoria website are now open. An advanced tutorial commences Wednesday the 1st of March, 7 till 9 p.m. for 12 nights. The charge for this is $150 and enrolments are also open via the Amateur Radio Victoria website. Recommended texts are Radio Theory Handbook for Amateurs by Fred Swainston or Radio Theory Handbook Beginner to Advanced by Ron Bertrand. Enrolment numbers are limited due to the fact that an assessment service is offered at the end of each tutorial. The tutorials are conducted via Zoom from the ham shack of Peter Cossins, VK3BFG, and includes various live presentations and short videos. 73, I'm Peter, VK3BFG.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's national news service. We are VK1WIA. Now, international news with VK2LAW Jason.
Hello, leading this week's international news from Region 1 in Ireland. Resignation of the President of the IRTS. The IRTS committee have received a letter of resignation from the President of the IRTS, Larry Echo India 9 Charlie November. The committee thanked Larry for his hard work and offered him best wishes for the future. Further information will be provided when it becomes available. In the United Kingdom, as part of the Charles III coronation celebration activities, Ofcom have approved R as the operational coronation regional secondary locator prefix for all UK radio amateurs. They'll be able to use this for the whole of May and June 2023. More information will be reported closer to the date of the coronation. To Hungary, Yota Summer Camp 2023. This is the 11th year, and this year it's in Hungary. The event itself will be held from the 5th to the 12th of August, 100 ambitious youngsters from around IARU Region 1, including guest teams from Regions 2 and 3, have been invited. To news from Region 2, in Canada, an amateur astronomer from southwestern Nova Scotia has reported a dazzling time-lapse of the green comet that's making a rare pass near Earth. The last time the comet was this close to our planet was 50,000 years ago. Many Canadians are looking up to the stars this week. Tim Doucette with the Deep Sky Eye Observatory near Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, is among them. He took a 2-hour time-lapse of the comet during the early morning hours of January 28. If you've got a telescope, are in Canada, and you look closely at the comet and the background stars, it's travelling relative in our sky about 1/4 degrees per hour, he told CBC Radio's Main Street, Halifax. So within a few minutes you can see the comet's actually making motion in the night sky. Chile, Argentina. A truck-sized asteroid that suddenly loomed out of the darkness with the Earth in its sights then sailed harmlessly past us on Thursday the 26th. Asteroid 2023 BU whizzed past without incident and back out into the blackness of space. The rock, which was spotted by an amateur stargazer in Crimea, came closest to the southern tip of South America at around 0029 GMT Friday, according to scientists who were tracking it. For VK1 WIA National News, in Sydney, I'm Jason, VK2LAW.
Rewind. Morse code is making a comeback. Children as young as 5 are learning the once groundbreaking form of communication, spurred on by K-pop bands who use it to leak hints about upcoming songs to fans. Now, whilst the youngsters are learning CW, do you need to learn what K-pop is? K-pop, or Korean pop, is the internationally popular, aesthetic-driven, style-bending, trend-setting music genre of the 21st century. Originating in South Korea, K-pop draws influence from a range of genres like pop, experimental, rock, hip-hop, R&B, electronic, and dance. South Korean boy bands Newest and TXT have both used Morse code within their music videos and even communicate hints about upcoming songs to fans. At the start of TXT's song Crown, Morse code is used to spell out the title before the song gets underway. Similarly, Newest's song Help Me spells out its title at the start of the song. Newest even had flashing lights communicating in Morse on their website to reveal the titles of their upcoming songs. This prompted young fans of the bands to scour the internet trying to find out the hidden meaning of the beeps, and Morse was rediscovered. But Morse in songs is years old. Even the Beatles' Strawberry Fields Forever has at the beginning of the song, right after Lennon sings, "Let me take you down 'cause I'm going to," at 16 seconds, a sequence of very faint beeps that spell out the initials JL. The B-52's Planet Claire. Pretty much the first 30 seconds is Morse code, which can be translated to any or all Allied warships. This is CFN. I am listening in and guarding this frequency. Just before this Canadian coastal station popped up in Morse, it also inadvertently is forever immortalised on Tubular Bells, coastal radio station GBR. VK3GK Lee Moyle continues our Morse in Music story.
Thanks, John. You can hear GBR transmitting on the Tubular Bells recording by Mike Oldfield. This great story features a radio station called Rugby Radio Station, GBR, that was in Warwickshire in the heart of England, and the famous mansion studio, the Manor, that Richard Branson of Virgin made available to Mike Oldfield, for whom he worked at Tubular Bells between 1972 and 1973. Located 60 kilometres from the Manor, where Mike Oldfield spent long months producing his great album, was Rugby Radio, where it was built at the end of the Great War and during the Second World War. It was used as a very low-frequency radio station, VLF, for communication with submarines in the North Atlantic and for telephone service between England and the United States. This station stopped broadcasting in 2003 and closed in 2007. The video link can be found on the WA website news release page, and it's really worth having a listen to.
Thanks, Lee, and we couldn't possibly go QRT with this segment without mentioning the top track on the Billboard Top 100 for the past 6 weeks. That's number one with a bullet, as we old jocks used to say. The song? SOS by Caesar. I'm John, VK4JJW.
Give me a second, give me a minute. Now, little bitch, can't let you...
We are VK1WIA. Now, operational news with VK4FUQ. Felix.
Hello there. Now, contest-wise 2023. February 25, 26, New Zealand's Jock White Memorial Field Day. The Jock White is always held on the last full weekend in February. Saturday 1500 hours to 2400 hours NZDT. Sunday 0600 hours to 1500 hours NZDT. And on 40 and 80 metres. Overseas stations in the South Pacific area are welcome, and a special category exists for us. John Moyle Field Day, March 18-19, the third weekend. UTC 0100 hours Saturday to 0059 hours UTC Sunday. Yoda Contest, youngsters on the air. First round 22nd of April, 0800 hours to 1959 hours UTC. May the 1st Saturday, Harry Angel Memorial Sprint, 106 minutes. An annual 80 metres contest event, first established in 1999 to commemorate the life of Harry Angel VK4HA, who at the time of his becoming a silent key was the oldest licensed amateur in Australia, at 106. The duration of the contest is 106 minutes, 1 minute for each year of Harry's life. Don Edwards Memorial Slow Morse Contest begins the weekend after Mother's Day, May 2021. 80 metre section, Saturday 20th of May, 6 to 9 p.m. Sydney time. 40 metre section of Sunday 21st of May, 1 to 4 p.m. Sydney time. DX window. The special event station VI 100MB is active during 2023, celebrating the centenary of VK2's Manly and District Radio Club. VI 10 Soda all year from Summits and VK1. In the Gamba, operating as C5YK until February 24. Listen on 20, 17, 15, 12 and 10 metres, mostly using the digital modes. Timor-Leste, 4W/JH2 EUV until March the 3rd. Activity 10, 12, 15, 17 and 20 metres, FT8. Guam, QRV is N7JBJ until April 28, on 40 to 10 metres using SSB and FT8. Turkey. Many special event stations with prefix and numeral TC100 are on air all year long celebrating the centenary of the Turkish Republic. Wallis and Futuna Islands. Jean Gabriel, F4CIX, signing FW1JG until January 2024. He is active on 40 to 6 metres using SSB and FT8. QSL via LTW. For VK1WIA National News, I'm Felix VK4FUQ Inningham.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's National News Service. We are VK1WIA. Now, Special Interest Group News with VK3GTV. Cole.
Hello everyone. First up, it's Worldwide Special Interest Group's ARDF, Kraken Direction Finding SDR. If you happen to be in the Hobart region, save the date of the 1st of March at 7:30 p.m. for Ollie, VK7NFI, who will be presenting and demonstrating the crowd-supplied/funded Kraken software-defined radio that's built specifically for direction finding. He'll be in the Reist Club grounds. 5 antennas are placed into a circle and used to direction find using a notebook or the smartphone application, which integrates nicely into Google Maps to let you know what the closest driven path to the radio Fox is. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, ATV, Fade to Black. The IRTS, Irish Radio Transmitting Society, is reporting the slow-scan TV unit aboard the ISS has completely failed. The interface card connecting the radios with the computer suffered damage beyond repair. New laptops are also being used, which require new interface components from the ARIS Russia team. ARIS Russia is developing this new interface and is consulting the ARIS International hardware and software team. Sergei Semberov, RV3DR, stated that they don't expect to complete the SSTV development efforts until early 2024. Until then, there'll be no more SSTV broadcasts. On to Worldwide Special Interest Group's Final Frontier. Swiss student satellite prepares for launch. An educational satellite built by Swiss students is being prepared for an important launch in February. With the help of a ham radio antenna donated by the Vaudois Amateur Radio Club, HB9MM, high school students in Switzerland will be learning how to download telemetry data and photos from a satellite they've helped build in a laboratory at Orbital Solutions in Monaco. They'll be able to send commands to the CubeSat to select telemetry and picture download. The downlink using BPSK and AX25 is on 436.825 MHz, and when the transponder is enabled, its uplink will be on 145.850 MHz. Still on space news, SpaceX successfully performed the first WDR of Starship Booster 7 and Ship 24 on Monday. This is a major milestone in any rocket's march towards a first launch, especially for a super heavy lift monster like Starship, which will have more than twice the thrust of the Saturn V. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Radio Amateur Old-Timers, and from our friends in the West comes Clive, VK6CSW.
Tomorrow is the first Monday of the month, time for the Radio Amateurs Old-Timers Club of Australia's monthly bulletin to go to air. This month, as well as the latest club news, I'll be talking about the Super Regenerative Receiver. This will be followed by Bill, VK3BR, telling us about the almost forgotten inventor of radio, Canadian-born Reginald Fessenden. Everyone, RAOTC members and non-members alike, is most welcome to listen to the program and to join in the callbacks afterwards. Full details of all transmission times and modes can be found on the RAOTC website, or just Google RAOTC broadcasts. If none of the transmission times suit you, you can download the audio file at any time from today from the club website. Members and friends of the RAOTC in Perth are reminded that the next lunchtime meeting will be at the new venue, the Woodbridge Hotel, East Guildford, and that will be on Tuesday, February the 14th. All are welcome. Further details are published on the RAOTC website under the subheading Luncheons. Tune in tomorrow for the February RAOTC Bulletin. Enjoy the programme and please join in the callbacks afterwards. 7-3 from Clive, VK6CSW.
Thanks, Clive. Next up, it's Worldwide Special Interest Groups, IOTA. Trowbridge Island IOTA number OC139. Trowbridge Island is an island located in the southwest corner of Gulf St. Vincent in South Australia, near the eastern edge of the Trowbridge Shoals. Adam, VK2YK, Chris, VK5FR, Ivan, VK5HS, and a team of other VK hams will be using the call sign VK5TIL from Trowbridge Island on the 7th, 8th and 9th of February. Worldwide Special Interest Group, Military. The RCA CR88 was a radio receiver made to work in top-secret government eavesdropping stations. As you might expect, these radios are top of the line, performance-wise, at least when they're working correctly. Hackaday have a story where a Mr. Carlson has one on his bench and they, and now us, get to watch the show on his recent video that you can see in the link we like best read at wia.org.au and click the current news text. The radio's design is decidedly heavy-duty, with a giant power transformer and many valves, IF transformers and large filter capacitors. The underside of the radio reveals neat wiring and some big metal shields. The metal shields and filters have a very specific purpose. The radio is probably in a bank of radios, and you don't want them interfering with each other. In addition, you might not want someone tracking your super-secret listening post by its RF emission. For VK1WIA National News, I'm Cole, VK3GTV.
Across Australia from VK1WIA, you're tuned to the WIA National News Service. On the Sunshine Coast, it can be heard from the following locations on our linked repeater system: Mullaney, 146.850, Noosa Heads, 146.825, Black Mountain Karoi, 146.975, and Echolink node 316084 or VK4WIS-R from 0900 local every Sunday. I'm Gordon, VK4VP.
Wrapping up the news, the 2023 social scene, VK6, it's Pargfest, February 11.
Come and join in the fun next Saturday morning when the Peel Amateur Radio Group in Mandurah, Western Australia, celebrates PARG's 40th anniversary. This year, the event will be bigger and better than ever before. The huge swap meet, tech talks by invited presenters, club displays and WA's amateur radio vendors will be there. Plus, we're running a huge raffle, which will be drawn on the day. Just think, you could share in $3,300 worth of prizes and walk away as the proud owner of an ICOM IC7300 HF transceiver, an IC2730A, a Hustler 5-band HF trap vertical, an IC-T10 and other great prizes. So as usual, the event will be held at the Mandurah Bowling Club, 89 Allnut Street in Mandurah, just a short walk from the light railway station. Doors open at 8 a.m. for exhibitors and sellers and 9 a.m. for visitors. $5 a person for entry and there's no table charge. PARG's emergency comms trailer, PARG 1, will be set up, so call CQ PARG on the VK6RMH repeater in Mandurah on 146 850 MHz with a 91.5 Hz subtone on the way in or on your way home and chat to VK6ARG on the Southwest All-Star Net. And what about taking the opportunity to sell some of your treasures by booking a swap meet table or three? For more information, email our secretary, Jenny, VK6JEN, parg.secretary@gmail.com, and check www.parg.org.au for details, links to the raffle, and for COVID updates on the day. PARGFest, WA's best. This is Mark, VK6QI for the Peel Amateur Radio Group.
And from west to east in VK4, it's the Sunshine Coast Car Boot Sale, February 12. Now till next we meet, I am Graham, VK4BB. Walk softly.
This has been the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Courtesy of Bevan, VK5BD's ATV and YouTube channel, this has been WIA National News. We're back now, live and local, and your voice, your callbacks. And don't forget, tick like.
Hello there, this is VK3OTN, the official station of the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia, with this month's news and information bulletin for friends and members of the club for February 2023. I'm Andrew, VK3 Charlie Alpha Hotel. Details of when to hear these news and information broadcasts are available at the club's website, www.raotc.org.au, or just put RAOTC into your favourite search engine. These news broadcasts are available for download for up to 6 months, just in case you miss the original news broadcast from the RAOTC website. The RAOTC is still in need of assistance. The pay isn't great, but it's big on job satisfaction. We really need a second person to assist with maintaining the website. I've done it for 10 years and happy to continue. However, there are occasions when I may not be able to. For example, if I'm laid up in hospital or some other disaster strikes. The software is free and details are available on the club's website. With so many last minute changes going on over the last several years due to COVID and who knows what else, friends and members of the club turn to the website for the very latest information. It's not an arduous job, but nonetheless very important. And once you get the hang of it, it won't take up vast amounts of your time. At present, Bill, VK3BR, is a fill-in replacement in the role of a broadcast coordinator. If anyone listening feels they may be able to help out in any small way in contributing to these broadcasts, please contact us via email, raotc@raotc.org.au. Alternately, there are some phone numbers located on the home page of the club's website. We need someone to produce a news bulletin every second month. I've documented what is required on the club's website, and the most important part is you probably already have everything needed. Even the software is free. Club news for February 2023. I trust everyone is healthy, having survived the festive season. There was a promotion for a well-known community service organisation that promoted that their Christmas cakes didn't have any calories, but only if consumed during the Christmas festive season. Somehow, I don't know if I quite believe it. At the time of recording this segment, late January, there was still no arrangements in place to take over the various roles that our editor, Bill, VK3BR, has performed for 20 or so years. I'm not too sure what, if any, arrangements are in place for the March 2023 broadcast. I plan to prepare and present the April 2023 edition of the broadcast. There should be some information about the latest Melbourne luncheon and also information about the upcoming ROTC renewals, if they are due. This leads me on to my next topic, which has been covered several times in recent years on the national WIA broadcast as well as other places. There are a number of members whose usual practice is to ignore their renewal notice until a second and final reminder arrives in the mail. This costs the club some money, sending out renewal notices, which is in turn borne by the remaining members of the club. The practice of ignoring the first renewal notice seems to extend to most of their other accounts with other organisations. However, there is one you don't want to ignore. That is the ACMA annual renewal. If you've got a call sign that you're rather attached to, my suggestion is pay it the day you receive it, not a moment later. ACMA used to be pretty terrible in methods on how to pay them. However, these days they make a wide range of methods available and is quite easy to deal with. I'll explain why you should take a close interest in this. The ACMA database is publicly available. You can search for a particular call sign and find out if it's currently allocated. There are some pretty clever people around that have written a computer script that interrogates the ACMA database, maybe on a weekly basis, and searches for example, all two-letter call signs and automatically produces a list available of two-letter call signs in a particular call area. This happens all automatically, all with no further human intervention. This information is then regularly published on perhaps a Facebook page or some other form of dissemination. No privacy laws have been broken. So if, for example, I was living in New South Wales and wanted to get a two-letter call in VK2, all I have to do is know where to look and sit back and relax and wait for a call to my liking to become available and then apply for it. It might take me a month or two. ACMA don't have very much room for leniency, and once someone else has acquired your call sign you've cherished for 30 years or so, have invested in a custom number plate for your car, have a whole stack of pre-printed QSL cards ready to go, there's a reasonable chance you won't get it back. I'm not sure precisely how long ACMA wait, but it could be as short as a month or so after the expiry of the licence. This is how many expired two-letter call signs are snapped up pretty quickly, all because one is a little tardy in settling accounts. There's quite a few amateurs have been bitten by this. This leads me on to the upcoming of issue OTN. For some of us, their issue will contain a renewal notice on the address fly sheet if renewal is due. Don't just tear open the OTN and throw the rest away. Please study the address fly sheet carefully to see if your renewal is due. And prompt attention to this matter would be very much appreciated by our membership secretary. There's plenty of easy ways to pay. Electronic funds transfer, or walk into any Bendigo Bank branch and hand a cash over the counter, or a cheque or money order sent in via Australia Post. The last option is a bit on the costly side these days. All these methods are described on the page on how to pay on the club's website, www.raotc.org.au. Luncheons. The March Melbourne luncheon will be held at the Caulfield RSL. More details are to follow and will be included in the cover sheet of the ATN as well as the club's website. A free lunch. Is there such a thing as a free lunch? Well, maybe yes. The RAOTC is always on the lookout for a guest speaker at their well-attended Melbourne luncheons. Most of us have done something productive in our lives over a wide variety of vocations, have some sort of story to tell. Why not consider stepping forward as a guest speaker? If your subject is somewhat related to radio, then that's great. However, if it's something of some other technical interest to others, then why not give it some thought? And for your efforts, you'll get a free lunch. Perth Luncheons. The popular and well-attended monthly luncheons for RAOTC members and friends in and around the Perth area are held on the second Tuesday of each month. The VK6 RAOTC group have a new venue, the Woodbridge Hotel, East Guildford. Reports so far indicate the hospitality to be excellent. We will meet again at 11:30am for lunch at 12 midday. This is not a buffet meal, but excellent food, in both pensioner and standard portions. We would like to place orders at 12 midday, so please don't be late. This information is courtesy of Phil, VK6ZKO, whose contact details can be found on the club's website. New members. Today I am pleased to welcome the following new members to the RAOTC. Stefan Boshanek, VK7 Zulu Sierra Bravo, became new full RAOTC member number 1847 on the 3rd of December 2022. And Amanda Hawes, a VK1 Whiskey X-Ray, became new full RAOTC member number 1848 on the 7th of January 2023. Silent Keys. Our current membership secretary, Bill, VK3BR, reports that he hasn't received any reports of silent keys since the October broadcast. Members are reminded that the very latest news is available via the RAOTC website. Put RAOTC into your favourite search engine to find it. The new banking details for the payment of monies to RAOTC seem to be working very smoothly. And that's about all the club news we have for you this month. Once again, for the very latest news, look at the RAOTC website.
You are listening to VK30TN and associated relay stations.
This month we have two interesting articles for you, both about radio. The first is by Clive, a VK6CSW, who tells us about the super regenerative receiver. This is followed by Bill, a VK3BR, who talks about the almost forgotten inventor of radio, Canadian-born Reginald Fessenden. Both these articles by Clive and Bill were first broadcast in 2012. Now it's over to Clive, VK6CSW.
And Centre, this is George American. We're leaving 7,000 on the 10 flight out visually. That's a visually 47.
Juliet Edinburgh, thanks for version 717, contact centre 133, decimal 9.
133, decimal 9, version 717.
That was a very brief exchange on 123.8 MHz VHF between air traffic control at Perth Airport and a Virgin aircraft. Nothing very remarkable, except that it was received via a one-transistor super-regenerative receiver. No RF amplifier, no IF amplifier, nothing except one lonely little transistor powered by a 9-volt battery. Most old-timers will be familiar with the super-regen, or rushbox receiver, but may not be aware that they're still being used commercially today. Most of us are familiar with the ordinary regenerative receiver with its reaction control. Used with care, positive feedback or reaction can give a simple valve or transistor detector a signal amplification of up to 10,000 times. Carefully designed, super regeneration can give amplification of several 100,000 times. The name of the American electrical engineer, Edwin Howard Armstrong, is usually associated with the invention of frequency modulation. But in 1914, while still a college undergraduate, he patented the idea of regenerative detection. In 1918, he patented the superheterodyne, and 4 years later, patented the super-regenerative detector. Pat Hawker, G3VA, writes in his book, Amateur Radio Techniques, One fateful night in 1921, quite by accident, Armstrong stumbled across super-regeneration. While setting up an ordinary regenerative receiver, he suddenly heard a signal coming through at a volume far beyond normal. He had time only to identify it as a station in the Brooklyn Naval Dockyard, and to pull in several other stations at many times normal volume when, just as suddenly as it had all begun, the effect disappeared. It took weeks of intensive work to pin down the principle of what Armstrong called super-regeneration as a new extension of the feedback principle. He demonstrated the additional amplification that is possible in a regenerative receiver when the oscillatory action is interrupted or quenched at supersonic frequencies of the order of 20 to 100 kHz. Such a detector can provide amplification of some 100,000 times or more in a single stage. Armstrong patented his idea in early 1922. Soon super-regeneration was hailed as the wonder drug for medium-wave broadcast reception, the solution to all problems, the only known means by which a simple two-stage receiver could provide full loudspeaker volume reception of weak signals. Later in 1922, the Radio Corporation of America bought Armstrong's patent for $200,000 and 60,000 RCA shares, a fortune in those days. Unfortunately, the rapidly increasing number of broadcast stations being established in the 1920s in America soon revealed two of the super-regen receiver's weaknesses: its lack of selectivity and its inability to hold a weak station in the presence of a stronger one. Also, radiation from the oscillating detector valve affected other receivers in the vicinity. It quickly fell from favor as a broadcast detector. Despite the simplicity of the super-regen circuit, mathematical analysis of it is actually quite complex. Nevertheless, its potential as a simple, highly sensitive VHF detector was recognized, and it was used by both sides in World War II. Pre-war, in the 1930s, amateurs too experimented with super-regen receivers in the 10, 6, 4 and 2 meter bands, and even into the gigahertz region, and continued to use them after the war. We have to remember that in those days, VHF frequencies were not much used commercially, and few VHF signals existed. Selectivity was not a major consideration, and if necessary, detector re-radiation could be minimized by the use of an RF amplifier. One early military use of super-regenerative detection was in IFF, Identification Friend or Foe, a transponder system first used in British aircraft early in World War II to distinguish them on radar from the enemy. The interrogating radar pulse was sensed by the transponder's super-regen receiver, and a stronger, coded identifying pulse returned to the radar operator to distinguish friend from foe. Forgetting to use your IFF could prove deadly. Later in World War II, another interesting, if unconventional use for the super-regen receiver was in shell proximity fuses. It was quickly recognized that if the detector's quench circuit components were disabled, the super-regen receiver became an unmodulated oscillator on the same frequency. By using the self-same coupling transformer that transferred the detector's audio output to the audio amplifier in reverse, the detector valve could become a low-power, audio-modulated transmitter. A simple multipole mechanical switch could transform a super-regen receiver into a transmitter. Such an arrangement was used in the Wireless Set 17, a voice radio used to link British searchlight batteries during World War II. The Japanese too used a similar technique for short-range army communications, and from it developed a 3-band VHF aircraft transceiver. Both of these sets have featured in OTN magazine articles. Many other uses were also found for the super-regen receiver. The super-regen can demodulate both FM and AM signals. Post-war, the super-regen receiver had something of a revival during the early days of FM broadcasting, but its recovered audio left hi-fi enthusiasts less than enthusiastic. On the other hand, many of us have played with these devices as VHF receivers or transceivers, legally or illegally. Several articles describing these activities have appeared in past issues of OTN magazine. How many of you recall the Fremedyne, a simple but effective VHF receiver published in Electronics Australia in the 1970s. Believe it or not, super regens are still produced. They find application in garage door openers, vehicle immobilizers, and other devices where a simple VHF or UHF receiver is all that is needed to convey the operating security code from transmitter to device. I hope that for many listeners, this brief but very incomplete talk will be a trip down memory lane. For those younger amateurs who've never experienced the fun and wonder of the super regen, have a dig around on the net. Build a simple transistor super regen and have your eyes opened. It was indeed a remarkable invention.
Uniform Golf, contact surf approach 123.6, fairways clearance, bye-bye.
You're listening to VK3OTN, the official station of the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia.
The almost forgotten inventor of radio. Many people contributed to the early development of electromagnetic theory, the invention of wireless telegraphy, and the development of antennas. These include well-known names such as Henry, Edison, Tesla, De Forest, and Armstrong in the United States, Hertz in Germany, Faraday, Maxwell, Heaviside, Lodge, Jackson, Marconi, and Fleming in the UK, and Popov in the USSR. However, Italian-born Guglielmo Marconi, working in England, is generally credited with being the inventor of wireless telegraphy. However, according to Marconi himself, he was an amateur in radio. Although he foresaw the business side of wireless telegraphy, he was aware of his own limitations as a scientist and engineer. Marconi's systems were based on spark technology, and he persevered with spark until about 1912. He felt that Morse code was adequate for communication between ships and across oceans, and saw no need for voice transmission. He was a pragmatist and uninterested in scientific inquiry in a field where commercial viability was unknown. Amongst many others, Marconi did not foresee the development of the radio and broadcasting industry, and left the early experimentation with wireless telephony to other people, particularly the relatively unknown Reginald Aubrey Fessenden. In contrast, Canadian-born Fessenden was a radio scientist and engineer who recognized that continuous wave transmission was required for speech, and continued the work of Nikola Tesla and others on the subject. Fessenden's work was dominated by his interest in transmitting words without wires, but he also felt that he could transmit and receive Morse code better by the continuous wave method than with the spark apparatus that Marconi was using. While Marconi kept building larger and larger antenna systems, since he was striving for greater transmission distance and improved signal reception, they lowered the operating frequency until late in 1907 he was down to using a frequency of just 45 kilohertz. But Fessenden's early experiments using spark transmitters were probably conducted at a frequency in the lower part of the HF band, since initially he was testing over short links of a few kilometers using 50-meter masts to support wire antennas. Incidentally, it is interesting to note that there is no evidence to suggest that Marconi made any serious attempt to investigate the higher frequencies until the early 1920s, when he was attracted to the HF bands by the exploits of amateur radio operators. As we know, by that time, radio amateurs had been banished to the then believed useless frequencies higher than 1500 kilohertz. In 1866, Fessenden moved to New York City and eventually progressed to working directly for Thomas Edison at the inventor's new laboratory in New Jersey. In 1892, Fessenden was appointed as professor for the newly formed Electrical Engineering Department at Purdue University in Indiana. While there, he helped the Westinghouse Corporation install the lighting for the 1893 World Columbian Exposition in Chicago. In the late 1890s, reports had begun to appear about the success Guglielmo Marconi was having in developing a practical radio transmitting and receiving system, and Fessenden began limited radio experimentation. By 1899, he had a wireless communication system functioning between Pittsburgh and Allegheny City, but soon came to the conclusion that he could develop a far more efficient system than the spark gap transmitter and coherer receiver combination which had been championed by Oliver Lodge and Marconi. In 1900, Fessenden left the University of Pittsburgh to work for the United States Weather Bureau, with the objective of proving the practicality of using a network of coastal radio stations to transmit weather information. Fessenden quickly made major advances, especially in receiver design, as he worked to develop audio reception of signals. His initial success came with the development of the Barretta detector, and then the electrolytic detector that set the standard for sensitivity in radio reception for the next few years. Also, some 11 years ahead of its time, Fessenden's fertile mind had invented the methodology and the word for combining two frequencies to derive their sum and difference frequencies, the heterodyne method of detecting continuous waves. However, it was not for another decade, when the versatility of the triode valve to be an oscillator or RF source was established, that the heterodyne receiver became a practical method for detecting continuous waves. Today, of course, heterodyning is fundamental to the technology of radio communications. On the 23rd of December 1900, Fessenden experimented with a high-frequency spark transmitter and successfully transmitted speech over a distance of about 1.5 miles. This appears to have been the first audio-radio transmission. At this time, the sound quality was too distorted to be commercially practical, but as a test, this did show that with further technical refinements, it could become possible to transmit audio using radio signals. By 1903, fairly satisfactory speech had been transmitted by the arc method, but the news of Marconi's attempts to achieve transatlantic wireless telegraphy transmission had caught the attention of the world. Since the development of his HF alternator was taking longer than anticipated, Fessenden set his mind to make a more continuous wave-like transmitter. This led to the development of the synchronous rotary spark gap transmitter. In January 1906, employing his rotary spark transmitters, Fessenden made the first successful two-way transatlantic transmission, exchanging Morse code messages between a station constructed at Brant Rock, Massachusetts, and an identical station in Scotland. Marconi had only achieved one-way transmissions at this time. Fessenden felt that the development of the rotary spark transmitter was something of a stopgap measure, and that ultimately a continuous wave transmitter would be far more efficient, particularly because it could be used for quality audio transmissions. His design idea was to take a basic electrical alternator, which normally operated at speeds that produced alternating current of, at most, a few hundred hertz, and greatly speed it up in order to create electrical currents at tens of kilohertz. Thus, the high-speed alternator would produce a steady radio signal when connected to an antenna. Then, by simply placing a carbon microphone in the transmission line, the strength of the signal could be varied in order to add sounds to the transmission. In other words, amplitude modulation would be used to impress audio on the radio frequency carrier wave. However, it would take many years of expensive development before even a prototype alternator transmitter would be ready, and a few more years beyond that for high-power versions to become available. By the autumn of 1906, Fessenden's alternator was working regularly at 75 kilohertz with an output of half a kilowatt. This was the beginning of pure, continuous wave transmission. The alternator transmitter achieved the goal of transmitting quality audio signals, but the lack of any way to amplify the signals meant they were somewhat weak. On the 21st of December 1906, Fessenden made an extensive demonstration of the new alternator transmitter at Brant Rock, showing its utility for point-to-point wireless telephony, including interconnecting his stations to the wire telephone network. A few days later, 2 additional demonstrations took place, which appear to be the first audio-radio broadcast of entertainment and music ever made to a general audience. On the evening of the 24th of December 1906, Fessenden used the alternator transmitter to send out a short program from Brant Rock. It included a phonograph record of the Largo from Xerxes by Handel, followed by Fessenden himself playing the song O Holy Night on the violin, and finishing by reading a passage from the Bible. Fessenden asked his listeners to write in about the quality of the broadcast as well as their location when they heard it. Surprisingly, his broadcast was heard several hundred miles away. However, accompanying the broadcast was a disturbing noise, which was due to irregularities in the spark gap transmitter. On New Year's Eve, a second short program was broadcast. The main audience for both these transmissions was an unknown number of shipboard radio operators along the east coast of the United States. Fessenden claimed that the Christmas Eve broadcast had been heard as far down as Norfolk, Virginia, while the New Year Eve's broadcast had reached places in the Caribbean. Although now seen as a landmark, these 2 broadcasts were barely noticed at the time and soon forgotten. But there is solid historical evidence that Fessenden's demonstrations of wireless telephony were well known at the time. Fessenden's broadcasts foreshadowed of the future of radio. Although primarily designed for transmissions spanning a few kilometres, on a couple of occasions the test Brant Rock audio transmissions were apparently overheard across the Atlantic. After 1920, audio-radio broadcasting became widespread, using vacuum tube transmitters rather than the alternator, but employing the continuous wave AM signals that Fessenden had helped introduce in 1906. Fessenden's legacy to radio includes 3 of his most notable achievements. The first audio transmission by radio in 1900, the first 2-way transatlantic radio transmission in 1906, and the first radio broadcast of entertainment and music also in 1906. Fessenden fought bitterly and alone to prove his theory that what we now call radio was worked by continuous waves sent through the ether by the transmitting stations, just as light waves are sent out by a flame. Marconi and others insisted that what was happening was a whiplash effect. It could be argued that the progress of radio was retarded by a decade by this error. The whiplash theory postulated by Marconi passed gradually from the minds of men and was replaced by the continuous wave, the change occurring with all too little credit for the man who had been right all along, relatively unknown Canadian-born Reginald Aubrey Fessenden. In keeping with tradition, we conclude this broadcast with a short story. The whole truth. There were 2 men working for the local municipal council. One would dig a hole. The other would come behind him and fill in the hole. These 2 men worked furiously, one digging a hole, the other filling it up again. A man watching from the pavement couldn't believe how hard these men were working, but he also couldn't understand what they were doing. Finally, he just had to ask. He said to the hole digger, "I appreciate how hard you work, but what are you doing? You dig a hole, and then your partner comes along and fills it up again." The hole digger replied, "Yes, I suppose it must look funny, but you see, our workmate who plants the trees is away sick today." Yes.
That's about all we have for you this month, and we hope you found something of interest. Thanks for being with us, and we hope you will join in the callbacks, where callbacks are taken. We look forward to being with you on the first Monday of next month, except January. 73 from VK3 OTN. the station of the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia.